Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming. My name is Peter Francis. I'm one of the instructors for digital literacy. I'm also joined by Justin Hardy, who is another instructor for digital literacy. And we have another guest who is Dave Mowry, who is yet another instructor for digital literacy. So I will be doing the presenting for this particular session, and Justin and Dave are here to answer any questions you guys might have in the chat box. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we will be covering in today's session. I want to thank you guys for coming to this session. This is our first session for digital literacy. So we're going to run through the GoToTraining platform itself. We're going to talk about just what is digital literacy. What are we going to be learning in the class? I'm sure you guys are very curious about that, so we'll be going over that. We're going to go over some just general tips for success in the class and for success as an online student in general. We're going to be going over kind of like the main topic for this week, which is your digital footprint, which is also known as personal branding. We're going to go over this week's your first discussion board for this week and your first assignment this week, which is kind of like your two main graded activities. You also have your quiz, which is based on the reading view. We won't be going over that in this particular session because that's kind of more self-directed, but we will be going over the discussion and the assignment. So this is what the GoToTraining control panel looks like. There's essentially two different ways that we can communicate with each other as part of these GoToTraining sessions. The first one, a lot of you guys are already taking advantage of, which is great, which is the chat box, which is what you're seeing here and over to the right. So the way that you use this is just by typing a message in the chat box and hitting enter or hitting send, and that sends your message out to the entire class. So all of your fellow classmates who are here in the session can read it, and also all the instructors can read it. So just make sure that anything that you are sending out to into the chat room is acceptable for a classroom environment. And also know that there's a toggle, a drop-down menu, so you can choose individual people that you can send a message to. So if there's like a fellow classmate you want to send a message to, or a fellow instructor or something like that you want to send a private message to, you can certainly do that. But just know that, for the most part, you just want to send it to the entire audience because there's a good chance that if you have a question, there's a good chance that the rest of the class will probably have that question as well. So it's probably just better that you just send it to the entire chat room. So the other way that you can communicate with the rest of the class is by using your voice. Right now, the rest of or everyone in the room is currently muted, except for me, and that's just because if everyone had their mic open, it'd be sort of loud in here, it'd be a little bit distracting. So if you do have like a question or a comment, you can always click this hand raise button, and I'll be able to see that you have your hand up. And what I can do is go ahead and unmute you. And if you have like a headset microphone, or if you have an internal mic built into your laptop, you'll be able to speak and we can hear you. So we'll be able to interact just as we would in an on-campus environment. So it's designed to sort of replicate that. So you do have that option as well. You can communicate in the chat box or in the using your microphone. Brian, yes, to answer your question, Gina Thompson, she did work for Full Sail. Full Sail is one of our sister schools for LA Film School, so we do share a lot of the same resources and faculty, that type of thing. So yeah, that's the two ways that we can communicate with each other. So you'll have a lot of opportunities to use those different communication methods as we progress throughout these different GoToTrainings throughout the month. So what is digital literacy? I'm sure you're all very curious about what digital literacy actually is and what we'll be learning throughout the month. So really quickly, just to get a couple of responses to get the to break the ice here. You can either type in the chat box or raise your hand. What is your idea of digital literacy? What comes to mind when you hear when you see that phrase? And there's really no right or wrong answers at this point. Online ethics, yeah, that's definitely part of it. Anybody else? Anything come to mind when they see the words digital literacy? We have a hand up, Zachary, so I can go ahead and unmute Zachary. And Zachary, it looks like you may have muted yourself, so if you right-click on your name, you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead, Zachary. You should be unmuted.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I just want to say hey to everybody. But I think digital literacy is just understanding the lingo and language of that world.
Yeah, understanding the language of the digital world. Yeah, definitely. That would be a huge part of it. Thank you, Zachary, for sharing your thoughts on that.
Okay.
And then Ayan is also saying understanding the digital world. Yeah, so gaining an understanding, that could definitely be a huge part of it. And I know we have some other hands up here, but we gotta move on to our definition of it because we got a lot to get to, and I know everyone's still sharing their thoughts. But basically, what our definition of it is, and a lot of you guys kind of touched on a lot of these thoughts or ideas already, so I appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts. Basically, it's knowing and learning software, becoming internet savvy, so not just using the internet, but becoming savvy in our understanding of it, conducting proper research, huge part of it, excellent communication practices, which I think one of you guys already mentioned, and creating a professional online presence, which is a huge part of what we'll be talking about here in week 1. So all of these different aspects sort of make up digital literacy. So you can keep these in the back of your head or the back of your mind as we move through the course here in week 1. So that's kind of our introduction here. What I want to do is move on to the second part, which are some general tips to succeed in the class, how to succeed in digital literacy, and also just how to succeed generally as an online student. So my first tip in that regard, it has to do with your email. And as it says here in the first bullet point, you want to be checking your email at least twice a day. And when I say your email, what I'm really referring to is your LA Film School email. And a quick note before we move on here and get too far into this topic, if you raise your hand and you have a question, and I'm not getting to it right away, please don't feel like I'm ignoring you. It's just because we do have a lot of information to get to in this session. Please know that we do make time at the end of every session to get to any questions that we didn't have time for. So please just keep that in mind, and also know that if you type a question in the chat box, Justin and Dave are there to answer those questions as well. So keep those two things in mind. So yeah, back to the email. When we're talking about email, what we're referring to is your LA Film School email account. You should be really checking that twice a day. If you're not familiar with, or you're not sure of how to get that account set up or how to check it, if you contact LA Film School online support, they can get you up and running with that. If you're not sure where to go to contact them, if you go to your activities page or activities list on the digital literacy course and click on how to get support, their contact information is on that activity. So you want to reach out to them and make sure you're able to check your email. And the reason I say that is because that's your official email for the school. So anytime anyone from the school is going to reach out to you, it's going to be through that email. So that means your instructor, that means financial aid, that means your advisor, that means really anyone from the school is going to be using your LA Film School account. When you're sending out emails, and this isn't really just emails, it's also, messages on the platform or comments or anything like that, you obviously want to make sure you're maintaining a professional tone. We don't want to use like text speak or anything like that. If it's an email, we want to use some type of greeting, hi, so-and-so, that type of thing. Close with some type of, ending salutation where you include your full name. That way we know who's contacting us. If it is an email, also try to include a subject. A good idea for a subject is just to include, for example, if you have a question about an assignment, to include the name of the assignment, just so we know For example, if you say, hey, I have a question about the assignment, we know specifically what your assignment you're referring to. And then finally, in general, about communication, make sure it's proactive. And what I mean by that is if there's an issue that comes up that is preventing you from turning in your work, make sure you're reaching out to us ahead of time and keeping us posted, because online courses, it's not really the same as an on-campus class where we're meeting, 2-3 times a week, and we're not really up to date with what's going on in your life. So, not saying we have to know everything that's going on with you personally, but if it's preventing you from being active in the class and getting your work done, we need to be aware of that. So, we don't need to know every detail, but you can just say, hey, I'm having a personal emergency or I'm having a family emergency. Can I get an extension on this particular activity? And, given the circumstance, we should be able to work with you, but we kind of need to know that stuff ahead of time. If you tell us after the fact, it's a little bit harder for us to work with you. So again, we can take it on a case-by-case basis, but just make sure that you are reaching out to us and making us aware of that. Grade feedback. So obviously we're still in week 1 yet, so you haven't really seen any grades being posted. But starting in week 2, after some of your activities are due, you'll start to see some of your grades being posted. And this is how it's broken down. It's in 2 components. You'll see your score. Obviously, you'll see your total score, but you'll also see the score, how it's broken down according to the rubric. And you'll also see our comments, kind of our general feedback of why you received that score. And when I'm referring to the rubric, this is what I mean. If I can just pull up an activity, get rid of this web clipper message. So here's an example of a rubric. So when we break down your score, it'll literally be how your points are tallied up according to the rubric. And this is your first discussion board rubric, and we'll go a little bit more in depth about the first discussion a little bit later in the session. But you'll see 35 in the first dimension, 25 in the second, 30 in the third, and 10 in the fourth. You see that obviously totals up to 100. So you'll see how many points you scored out of each dimension and how that totals up to 100. And if you missed any points in any particular dimension, you'll see how many points you got out of each dimension. So you'll see exactly where, if you lost points, you'll see where you lost points. Now, if you lost points in a particular dimension, our comments, our written feedback is where we'll kind of tell you, why you lost those points. So in our comments, we'll say, here's all the areas where you did well, and here's all the areas where you can improve upon for the future. So really our overall goal, to sort of simplify this in our grade feedback, is we don't want it to be a mystery as to why you received your grade. We want you to know the areas where you did well. And in future discussion boards and future assignments, we want you to know the areas where you can improve so that you can improve upon your grade in the future. So to that end, it's really important that you're checking on your grades on a regular basis so that you can make improvements on a regular basis. So don't just wait until the end of the course to check your grades, because by then it's really too late to make those improvements. Now, we're going to talk about your discussion boards, but before we do that, what I want to say, kind of the best way to complete your work for the course is, by now you've probably seen that there's an activities list and the activities are numbered. The best way to go through this activities list is just to go down and complete the activities in order. There's 2 different types of activities. There's unweighted activities and there's weighted activities. The unweighted activities don't count towards your final grade. The weighted activities do. So you might be thinking, well, the unweighted activities, if they don't count towards my final grade, that means I must not really have to do them. That is actually not true. The unweighted activities are still required. And not only that, they are there to help prepare you for the weighted or graded activities. So for example, one of the unweighted activities is something called a read-in view. And that is essentially materials that we've provided for you to help prepare you for the assignment, to help prepare you for the quiz or the knowledge check quiz. So if you were to just skip over the read-in view, it would make it a lot harder on you to complete the assignment, and it would make it a lot harder on you to complete the knowledge check quiz. So that's why we say it's just a lot easier if you just go in order and just go do 1.1, do 1.2, do 1.3, do 1.4, and just complete all the activities in order. So that would be my best piece of advice for you. Now, that being said, the first of the graded or weighted activities for you for this week is your discussion board. So let me kind of break down how that works. My first piece of advice for you with this is to read the instructions in the rubric. The instructions are going to tell you what you need to post, what prompts you need to answer. The rubric is going to tell you how you are graded. That rubric that's included, remember I just showed you what that looked like as part of the instructions. That rubric is the same rubric that your instructors are looking at to assign you a grade. So it's the same exact rubric. That's the guide that we use to grade you. So you can essentially grade yourself before you even post anything. So you want to make sure you look at that. The way that the discussion boards work from week to week is there are 2 posts that you will be required to do for your discussion board. There's an initial post that's due on Wednesday. So that means today's Tuesday. So that means tomorrow your initial post is due for your first discussion board. So that's tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. So once you get your initial post done, you're not quite finished yet for the week as far as the discussion board. You also have a follow-up or a reply post where you actually go in and reply to one of your fellow students by Sunday in this same activity, the same discussion board. So you want to do that by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. So at this point you might be thinking, well, what am I writing for my initial post and what am I writing for my reply post? We're going to go over that a little bit later when we talk about this week's specific discussion board. So don't worry, we're going to go over that in much greater detail. Ideally, if you can, you want to try to visit the discussion board every day. I know not all of you will be able to do this, but if you can, you want to try to visit every day. And this is for a couple of reasons. You're going to get more out of the class because you're going to see the different perspectives of your classmates. You're going to see that your instructors will go in there and add their comments. And you're just going to get more out of the class because you'll get the different ideas and opinions from your fellow classmates. And the second reason is it increases the likelihood that you'll post more in there, which of course is going to positively affect your grade. And then finally, you want to make your posts constructive. In any discussion, of course, there's the likelihood that you might disagree with someone who is posting something, which is totally okay. You just want to make sure you're disagreeing with people in a constructive manner and keeping your comments respectful. The second of the graded or weighted activities from week to week is the assignment. Now, the assignments are typically going to be due on Sunday. My best piece of advice for these is to start early. So even though it's due on Sunday, you don't want to wait until Sunday because what you're going to find is if you wait on Sunday or wait until Sunday, you're going to find that it's not enough time to just complete it all in one day. So you want to, if you can, start early in the week and just work on it little by little. That'll be way less stressful for you guys. Just like with the discussions, you want to read the instructions and the rubric so you know in the instructions what you need to do, and with the rubric how you're going to be graded on what you're doing. A lot of the assignments also have a FAQ section. If you're not familiar with that phrase, FAQ stands for frequently asked questions. So if you're not sure of what to do after you've read the instructions, there's a good chance that your question's probably answered there. That being said, if you're reading through the instructions and you're just kind of a little bit lost, don't be afraid to reach out to your instructor, whether that's myself or Justin or Dave, and we'll be happy to help you with anything you need. And again, just to reiterate my point from earlier, if you feel as you're working on it, something comes up, personal emergency, family emergency, that type of thing, you know that it's going to be late, you're not going to make it by Sunday, please let us know ahead of time. So, if the situation warrants it, we can try to work with you and provide an extension. But don't let that deadline pass and then try to reach out to us after the fact because it makes it a lot harder on you and it makes it a lot harder on us to try to work with you. So, please be proactive in your communication. And the last of the graded or weighted activities from week to week will be your knowledge check quizzes. These are due on Sunday as well, so just plan for that as part of your schedule from week to week. These are open book. Now, I mean, technically, there's no book for this class, so when I say open book, what I mean is they're based on the read and view activity. So what that means is you can have, all of the articles from the read and view activity open while you are completing the knowledge check quiz. So don't feel like you have to complete the knowledge check quiz from memory or anything like that. You can refer back to the articles, you can refer back to the videos and everything that's included in the knowledge check quiz. Now, the thing to remember with the knowledge check quiz is you can only take it once. So just be sure that when you're ready to take the knowledge check quiz that you're actually ready to do it. And again, just remember that this is due Sunday for your planning purposes. The go-to sessions. Now, obviously, we're in our first go-to session right now. There will be one session per week, so that means 4 total. They are presented to you in 2 different ways. The first way is live, and the second format it's presented in is in recordings. And the reason why we offer them as recordings as well is because we know that you all have different schedules. Outside of school, you have work, family, that type of thing. So we want to be accommodating for that and provide the recordings. Ideally, if you can, we'd like for you to attend these sessions live because it gives you the opportunity to ask questions and things like that. But if you can't, please make sure you're watching the recordings. At the end of the day, we just want to make sure that you're getting the content because, again, this content is here to help prepare you for the activities in the class. So it's kind of giving you the background information that you need. And what we see time after time is that the students who either attend the sessions live or watch the recordings, they tend to do better in the class. So please, whether you watch it live or watch the recordings, just please make sure that you are watching these sessions and getting this information. So for those of you who are here live this evening or who are watching the recordings, you should be patting yourself on the back because you're definitely starting out on the right foot. And just to speak to the larger topic that I mentioned earlier about, starting out in general as an online student, not necessarily just for digital literacy, but for a lot of you, this may be your first time as an online student. There are a number of topics that come up for a first-time online student. Issues with time management, balancing personal obligations, your study environment. Again, something I spoke to earlier, which is, not being afraid to ask questions of your instructors and getting what you give. You definitely, whatever you put into the class is what you're going to get out of it. So if these sound like issues that are relevant to you, what I'm going to do is go ahead and put this URL into the chat box so you can examine this article more closely. If you feel like it will be something helpful to you, you can take a look at it, read it more closely after the session. Now, there are additional resources that are provided by LA Film School outside of digital literacy itself. The first is your student advisor, which many of you have probably already been in contact with. They are there to help you with anything that is outside of digital literacy specifically. So that means if you need some tips and strategies for balancing school with your personal or work life, if you want any advice on or guidance on your specific degree program, any questions sort of just related to the school that aren't specifically related to digital literacy and the assignments, your student advisor would be the person to go through for that. So if you haven't already reached out to them, please feel free to do that. The other entity that I wanted to draw your attention to was online support. They are there to help you with any sort of technical problems that you might be having with the LAO, the online platform. So this means, this is your first class here with LA Film School. So if you're ever having problems, either maybe posting on the discussion board or submitting an assignment, these types of things are the things that come up in your first class. So reach out to online support. Let them know you're trying to submit you're having problems uploading, that type of thing, let them know. Also, let your instructor know to keep us in the loop. Let us know that you're trying to solve the problem and that you've reached out to online support so we know that you're actively trying to work on it. Don't just say, well, I tried uploading my assignment and it didn't work, so I guess I'm just not going to upload it. Make sure that you're taking steps to actively solve the problem and keeping your instructor in the loop. Just some general tips for success in the course. Make sure you're keeping a positive attitude and an open mind. Things will just go a lot more smoothly for you if you kind of adopt that type of attitude. Know that I'm not here to fail you. None of the other instructors are here to fail you. We want you to succeed. So, please just keep that in mind. And as I just mentioned, if there's any technical issues that come up, make sure you're contacting support right away to try to get those solved. Okay, so let's move on to our next sort of part 3 here of this go-to session. So we are talking about kind of like our main topic. Let me close down some of these other presentations here so it doesn't get too crowded here on the screen. So kind of our main topic here for week 1 is digital footprints, which is also known as personal branding. So what we're going to go over is personal branding, laws. I'm sorry, Frank is saying he can't hear me. Can everybody hear me okay? Oops. Okay, Frank, if you... Okay, so what we're going to cover for this part of the session is personal branding, obviously, like I just mentioned, and we're going to cover the laws concerning personal branding and also the process of personal branding. So what is personal branding? Essentially, it's how you would be described both professionally and personally. The two are very much interlinked. They're no longer separate, and that's very much because of the rise and prevalence of social media. Okay, so because of social media, so much of our personal life is now just sort of out there for everyone to see, and that everyone includes our employers, it includes our clients, all of those people. So we have to be cognizant and aware of what we're doing personally can now affect our professional lives. And that's all part of our personal brand. It's all part of our digital footprint. So personal branding, by definition, is the process by which we market ourselves to others. So when we market ourselves to others, what does that mean exactly? When we think of the term marketing, we often associate that with products. So it's sort of hard to think of ourselves as a product. We're people, we're not products. But essentially what we're marketing is ourselves. We're marketing our skills, we're marketing our knowledge. So when we go to an employer or we take ourselves to a project or a gig or to a client, we're essentially going to that person or to that organization. We're saying, here's the skills that I have to offer you, or here's the experience I have to offer you. So that's what we're marketing. That's what we're selling, for lack of a better word. So we want to think about those skills. We want to think about those knowledge. We want to, as it says here, think about how we want to portray ourselves professionally, in person, and in the sense of our digital footprint, translate that to the internet. So when we're translating that to the internet and other avenues, we start to become, as it says here, a brand. Whoops, sort of destroying the whole presentation here. But as a brand, we can use the same strategies that make celebrities or other so-called corporate brands appeal to various audiences. So we have here a list of very recognizable brands. So we have examples here, Nike, Ferrari, Honda, Steven Spielberg, Mark Zuckerberg, so on and so on. So let's take the two car examples here, Ferrari and Honda. At the end of the day, Ferrari and Honda, they're both car companies. But when we think about them as brands, they couldn't be more different. I mean, Ferrari, it's luxury, it's a sports car. It's very much associated with wealth, a certain lifestyle. All these things come to mind when you see just the word or the logo of Ferrari. Honda, very different in their associations. It's very much affordability, reliability, um, very much different from Ferrari, sensibility, all that type of stuff. So yes, they're both car companies at the end of the day. They're both very similar, but they couldn't be more different. And it's the way that they've used their branding um, and their strategies to make these associations in people's minds. So, as professionals, as individuals, we can use these same strategies to make these associations to employers, to our clients, to whatever projects or gigs that we want to get. So you might be thinking, well, this is great for Nike or Ferrari or for Honda or for celebrities who have millions or in some cases billions of dollars to spend on their marketing and their advertising and things like that. But I don't have that kind of money. How am I supposed to get my message and my branding out there? Well, the good news is there are tons of ways that you can get your message out there that are essentially either free or just very, very low cost. And we'll talk about what some of those strategies are. If I can, there we go. So before we talk about some of the specific strategies, we have to talk about the actual laws of personal branding. So the first one is authenticity. We got to be authentic. We have to define our brand before someone else does. If we can't define our own brand, there's really no sense in putting out our digital footprint and putting out our personal brand. So we have to define our brand before someone else does that for us. It's also important to be transparent. And this kind of speaks to authenticity as well. We want to be straightforward and honest with our abilities. We don't, it's very tempting to sort of talk ourselves up and maybe exaggerate what some of our abilities are, especially in a job interview or on a resume and things like that. We definitely want to try to avoid that. Um, you know, Sometimes it can be tempting to try to get our foot in the door to exaggerate our abilities, but we'll get found out really quick, and that can ruin our reputation when we can't actually live up to the skills that we said that we had, and that can ruin our reputation, and that can ruin our ability to get jobs or gigs or projects in the future, or clients in the future as well. So, and then that brings us to visibility. So this is where our digital footprint or our personal brand really comes in, and really what it's saying here is in today's social media age, if we're not putting ourselves out there, if we're not known, we don't exist. Because guess what? If we're not putting ourselves out there, there's hundreds, if not thousands of other people like there who are. So for any particular gig or job or project, we're going to get passed over for that opportunity for someone who is actively putting themselves out there. So as it says here, even a basic online presence can really make all the difference. That brings us to the steps of personal branding, which are discover, create, communicate, and maintain. And we're going to go through each of these steps one by one. Discovery, it's really all about figuring out who you are, what do you want to be, and what you want to do in life. And for a lot of you, since you're here at LA Film School, you've already taken that step. You're here because you're pursuing a specific goal. And that can be really hard to do, really hard to figure out for a lot of people. So just the fact that you've taken that first step and signed up to pursue a specific degree, that's really no small feat. So again, you guys should be patting yourself on the back that you've even made it this far, because some people don't even take that first step in life to pursue their passion. So, you guys should really be congratulating yourself as far as that's concerned. So that's the discovery step. That's the first step, figuring out who you really are and what you want to do in life. Again, not an easy task. Creation. Once we figured out who we are, we can now start using some of the tools that are actually out there and start creating some of these tools and start using some of these tools to actually create our personal brand. So there's things out there like social media, and even traditional formats like business cards that are, may seem old fashioned, but are still very relevant in today's business world. especially if we're meeting someone in real life, like at a conference or something. Just having that tangible thing that we can hand to someone that has our contact information. If we meet someone and just say, "Hey, my name's so and so," they might forget our name 5 minutes later. But if we hand them something that has our contact information, even if they forget our name, they can still refer back to that business card later. So yes, the digital things like social media, YouTube, all that stuff, very much important and rapidly becoming more and more important. But the tangible things like a business card, a portfolio, a resume, also still very much important in the industry these days. So those are some of the tools that we can use. Once we have our tools and once we've actually created them, it's time to actually put it out there. It's time to put ourselves out there. So that's where the communication comes in. So as it says here, we have to essentially become our own PR person and start advocating for ourselves. So it's, we're actively putting ourselves out there. We're actively kind of promoting ourselves, actively representing ourselves and our accomplishments. And then once we've begun to do that, we have to do it continuously. And that's where the maintain step comes in. So our brand, who we are, will grow and develop as we find our place in the industry or find our audience. So what that means is with every new accomplishment, with every new skill we learn, with every new project we've worked on, with every new position at a company, with every new gig, every new internship, whatever it may be, it's up to us to inform our audience. Now, we don't want to do it too much that we're being kind of like overly aggressive or overbearing, but if it's a significant thing, we learn a new piece of software or collaborate with someone, we need to let people know about that, because unless we've gotten to that point in our career where we've been able to hire someone to do that for us, it's up to us. We got to inform people about it for the time being. So we need to make sure we're doing that so that the proper people know what's going on. So just a little bit of statistics really to kind of wrap this idea up. Where's your reputation online? Make sure you're checking your social networking sites often. Not so often that is consuming your entire life. I mean, we're all here at LA Film School because, we're here to be creative, but we want to make sure we're monitoring our social networking so that we make sure we're putting the right message out there. 80 million names are run through Google search engine every day. Is your name one of them? I mean, given these statistics, it's likely that it is or one day will be. 70 to 90% of employers are using social networks. This is just the reality of the world that we live in. I mean, employers do use social networks to screen the candidates that they hire. It's just sort of a fact of life that these days. So at the end of the day, it's all about what we want people to find. What do we want our reputation to be? Okay, so we're right at the last part of our session here. And what I want to do now is go through the discussion board, and then we'll wrap things up by going through the assignment. And then what I'll do is leave time at the end for any questions you guys might have about anything that we covered in this evening's session. So let me get a drink of water real quick, and then we'll go through the discussion board. Thanks, William. I'm glad you're enjoying it so far. All right, so this is your discussion. It's all about your digital identity, so it's kind of designed to introduce you as a student to us as your instructors and also to your fellow students. So it's just a way for you guys to kind of get to know each other. So you have several questions to choose from. You don't have to answer all of them, but it would be a good idea to answer at least a few of them. My best advice starting out would be to answer at least 3. If you want to answer more, perfect. That would be great. But at least 3, I think, would be a good start for your initial post. So let's take a look at what some of the questions are. So this is for your initial post. These are the questions that you want to answer. So the first one's asking, is there anything you are already doing to establish your digital your digital footprint or online identity? What are the goals that have driven you to begin your degree program? How important is it for you to graduate from this degree program and why? How will you stay motivated during weeks that you are very busy, have heavy work or family demands, or don't feel too well? Do you already have any industry experience? If so, tell us about it. How do you learn best? What are your greatest challenges with learning, if any? What strategies do you plan to utilize to help you overcome challenges? What do you think will be the hardest part of completing your degree? How do you plan to overcome these challenges? What is your plan? Why is it important? What are some things you would like to know about your classmates? So those are the questions that you should be answering for your initial post. Again, you don't have to answer all of them, but at least 3 would be a good start. Again, those are due by this coming Wednesday night at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. Then remember you have a second post that's due by this coming Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. In this second post, you want to reply to one of your fellow students. You only have to do one reply, but if you want to do more than one, that's fine. Basically, for your reply, you just want to read through some of your fellow students' posts and just reply to it. Just give your thoughts on it. You can say whether you agree or disagree with some of the things that they said and just elaborate on it. Share some of your own stories, share some of your own examples. But the main thing to remember for the reply is just make sure it's as detailed as possible. Put as much thought and detail and just elaborate as much as possible on it as you can. So you don't just want to treat the reply as sort of just like an afterthought, something that you did in 5 minutes. Really put a lot of thought into it and think about what would you want someone to say about your initial post. So this discussion, like all discussions, has a rubric. So before you post, make sure that everything is falling into this exceptional column so that you can get the grade that you're wanting on it. All right. So this discussion also has a frequently asked questions section. So there's a good chance that if you have a question on what you're doing, that is probably answered here. If you look at the FAQ, you've looked through the rubric, and you look at the instructions, and you still have questions, feel free to let us know, and we'll be happy to answer those. Okay, so that is the discussion in a nutshell. What I want to do now is also go through the assignment, and then, like I said, I'll make time at the end to answer any questions you guys might have. So this is your first assignment for the class. It is due on Sunday. I think this is going to be a fun assignment for you guys because you essentially get to be a detective. Again, we're continuing our topic here of digital footprints. So essentially what you're doing is you're going to select an entertainment industry professional. Think about someone who you look up to in your field. Maybe someone who you'd like to be like someday, someone whose career you would like to emulate. And once you've selected your industry professional, basically what you're going to do is research that person's digital footprint. So, their digital footprint is, are they active on social media? Do they have an official website? Do they have a blog? Are they posting video on, video sites like YouTube, Vine, all the video sites? Are they active on Tumblr? Think about all the areas where people can be active on the web. Go to those areas and see if your industry professional is there. Find as much information, as much evidence of their digital footprint as you possibly can. The more evidence that you find, the easier it's going to be for you to answer the questions that I'm about to go over. So the way that you kind of collect this evidence is in the form of screen captures. If you've never done a screen capture before, there's information on how to do that in the class resources activity that's in the activities list. You can also capture it in the form of links. So just copy and paste the URL from your web browser and any other form of documentation that you can think of. All right. So once you've gathered all of that evidence, you're going to use it to answer the questions in part 1. So in part 1, you're really just analyzing their digital footprint. All right. So some of the questions in part 1 are asking, how does this person's digital footprint represent them as an industry business professional? Is this image presented positive or negative for their career and personal brand? Are there any exceptions? What might a potential hiring manager or business partner be impressed with? And what might cause someone to discount this person as a potential business partner? Explain your findings, and this is important. You want to give examples to illustrate your opinions. And the examples are essentially going to come from all the evidence that you found of their digital footprint. Okay? So in part 2, you're now going to talk about your own digital footprint. So you're going to answer these questions. What have you learned in this week's activities, including this exercise? Determine the steps you can take to manage your own digital footprint to create an image that will present you positively and professional online. Describe the digital footprint or online brand that you wish to portray, and list steps you will take to achieve this goal. So in part 2, you're really talking about your own digital footprint. Now you might be thinking, what is the format that you're looking to put this in? What is this all going to look like when it's all said and done? Well, the format can really be your own, of your own choice. So that means it could be in a written document, like a Word document, a typed document that includes visual images. It could be a slideshow presentation, like a PowerPoint or a keynote presentation. It could be an audio-visual podcast or a video. So any of those formats would be acceptable. If you want to do it in a different format, just make sure you contact your instructor first, and we'll let you know if that's okay. Make sure, this is really important, make sure you're citing the references of the sources that you use. As far as the citations, just make sure you're including the full URL, the full link to the information that you're using. You want to include your name and student number. And then once your presentation or document is fully finished and you're ready to submit it, you want to compress and upload your file. If you've never compressed a file before, again, there's information on how to do that in the class resources activity on your activities list. If you're using a web-based tool to create your presentation or your document, just make sure you are uploading a non-private link. Copy and paste that link to a document and upload that document to the LMS. Either way, you're going to label your file last name _ first name _ assignment name. This activity, like all your graded activities, has a rubric. Again, this is the same rubric that your instructor will be looking at to grade your activity. So make sure that all your work falls in this exceptional column. If you're feeling like some of it might fall into proficient or maybe even needs improvement, you might want to go back and make sure you're answering all the questions or providing a little bit more detail. So that is falling to the exceptional column. This assignment also has a FAQ section, so that if you have a question about something, there's a good chance that it's answered here. Now, that being said, if you have an if you've read through the FAQs, you've read through the rubric, and you've read through all the instructions, and you still have questions, please feel free to reach out to your instructor, and we'll be happy to help you in any way we can. Now, with that, that's essentially all the information that we wanted to give you for this session. If you feel like you got all the information you needed, you are free to leave for the evening, and we hope you enjoyed the session. We hope you found it informative. However, if you do have any other questions, please feel free to stick around. We'll be happy to get those answered for you. But like I said, if you feel like you're good to go, then you are free to leave for the evening. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you guys for coming.